anytime the FCC or Congress tries to attack the internet and attack net neutrality, Netflix has been one of the few companies that has been a consistent ally in the fight to keep the internet free and open. Now, this time, they've been conspicuously quiet, which is concerning to a lot of people because Netflix, even though it may seem as though at face value, what they say doesn't really mean much, well, Netflix has a lot of legitimacy and people really love their service. So if they tell you that net neutrality is important for services like Netflix and Hulu, then that gives the fight for net neutrality a lot of steam, but they chose, for selfish reasons, to back down from the fight. So The Verge explains, speaking with Recode's Peter Kafka at the Code Conference today, Netflix CEO Reed Hastings explained his position on the current net neutrality debate that's happening at the FCC. Or, more to the point, he addressed the fact that he's been awfully quiet about it compared to how loudly he defended net neutrality in previous fights. It's not narrowly important to us because we're big enough to get the deals we want, Hastings said. It was a candid admission. No matter what the FCC decides to do with Title II, Netflix isn't worried about its ability to survive. Hastings says that Netflix is weighing in against changing the current rules, but that it's not our primary battle at this point, and we don't have a special vulnerability to it. He does believe that smaller players are going to be harmed if net neutrality goes away, saying that where net neutrality is really important is the Netflix of 10 years ago. The Trump FCC is going to unwind the rules no matter what anybody says, Hastings argues. He might believe that net neutrality is important for society, but his company, Netflix, isn't in trouble, so it's not going to get into the fight. We had to carry the water when we were growing up and we were small, Hastings said. Other companies have to be on that leading edge. Wow, so that right there tells you everything you need to know about Netflix. Fuck you, I got mine. Because the quote was, it's not narrowly important to us because we're big enough to get the deals we want. Wow, this CEO who has a lot of power, whose company is generally very well liked, who's had exponential growth, is saying, you know what? Even though my company was able to grow because of net neutrality, I'm willing to have the door closed behind us because it's not going to affect us now. Well, that right there is just selfish. That's just selfish. And again, people, I know I'm going to get pushback because people think, why are we caring about what Netflix has to say? But again, they've been a strong ally because they have legitimacy. They have a lot of sway. People like Netflix. People are gravitating towards Netflix. I love Netflix. And Netflix was the victim of Comcast throttling their bandwidth in 2014. And we use that as an example. I use that as an example as to what would happen if net neutrality went away. And now Netflix is throwing their hands up and saying, well, you know what, we'll say we're in favor of net neutrality, but we're not going to really back any pony. We don't have a horse in this race. That's really, really disappointing to me, to say the least. There's already so much disinformation and propaganda being disseminated at the behest of the likes of Verizon and Comcast and Charter and AT&T. So a lot of people don't even know what's at stake here. They don't know that their internet will be destroyed forever if net neutrality is repealed. They just don't understand it. So people are ambivalent because they don't really know how this will impact them. And a lot of people have reached out to me saying they don't know how to convince people and explain net neutrality. And here's what I'll do. I'll link to an article in the description box that talks about a Chrome extension that you can put on your browser that gives you a little bit of a hint as to what the internet would be like if net neutrality goes away. And it's not a pretty picture. It's not a pretty picture at all. We don't know all the consequences, but I'm sure that, Verizon and Comcast are going to be pretty creative. It's not just going to be about them closing off certain sections of the internet and demanding that you pay more, or trying to impose ransoms on smaller companies, or throttling the bandwidth of smaller websites. Much more bad things can happen. And to all the conservatives who are fighting liberals on this, I hope that your websites are the first to go and be throttled. I really do. I mean that. I hope that Breitbart and InfoWars, they're already poison and toxic to political discourse. I hope they go first because we know they're going to be targeted. And when that time comes, we'll be saying, I told you so. So the issue is that the internet is, if net neutrality goes away, the internet won't be free and open for everyone. I mean, we're not arguing just for liberal websites. We're arguing for everyone. So get on board and fight with us. Don't be stupid. Realize what's in your best interest and stop advocating for a position that will hurt you and that goes against your own self-interest and everyone's self-interest and that will hurt democracy. Imagine, Bernie Sanders, he did so well in his campaign. Imagine what would happen if we didn't have net neutrality. Websites that push for Bernie Sanders would have been throttled or stifled if Comcast didn't like Bernie Sanders. And we know that they don't because Comcast owns a lot of these media networks, or they're the parent company of these media networks that did propaganda for Hillary Clinton. So, think of how easily Comcast could control democracy if net neutrality is destroyed. But I'm getting this sick feeling, and I hope I'm wrong, that net neutrality will in fact go away. I see the effort not having much of an impact, and I don't see the level of resistance that I saw last time in 2015 when Tom Wheeler tried to kill off net neutrality. And I really, really hope I'm wrong here, but I just have this really sick feeling, and I think about it and it bothers me so much that net neutrality will be going away. So please, 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 fight. Don't be stupid. File a complaint. Don't stick your head in the sand and, pretend like liberals are just making a mountain out of a molehill. That's not the case. Net neutrality is important. It affects everyone, conservatives and Democrats alike.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.